I was terrified of disappearing. Not dying, disappearing. 30 years boiled down to a handshake, a half smile, and an envelope light enough to float. Have you ever given everything to a place and wondered if anyone would remember your name once the cake is gone? Have you ever stood under fluorescent lights, hearing polite claps bounce off the walls, and thought, is this all my son's childhood was worth? His missed games, the birthdays I called from the plant, the nights I lied and said, I'll be home soon. What would you do on your retirement day? The man who called you like a father slid you a $25 Starbucks card, then turned in the same breath and gave his nephew a $12,000 bonus right in front of you. Would you swallow it and smile? Would you rage? Would you say nothing because saying anything might cost you the one thing they couldn't take? I clutched that envelope like it might bite me. $25. Not even cash, a plastic thank you to sum up a life. And I wish I could tell you I laughed it off, that I had the thick skin of a veteran who's seen worse. But the truth is, my chest caved in. Have you ever felt that hot, hollow shame where your heartbeat should be? The kind that makes you want to disappear into the nearest supply closet, just so nobody has to watch you swallow it. I kept thinking about Eli, my kid, my reason. He'd texted me that morning, proud of you, Dad, we'll celebrate tonight. How do you tell your son that the room you built your back in couldn't even be bothered to pass a hat? Then my boss, Mark, cleared his throat like he was about to announce a wedding. He slapped Cody, the nephew, on the back and said, and to keep our best young talent from being poached, we're awarding a $12,000 signing bonus and a fast-track title. The applause for him was loud enough to sting. People whistled. Cody tried to make his face do Hummel, but his eyes flicked past me like a potted plant. Do you know that feeling when the universe measures you in front of a crowd and you come up a paperclip against someone else's gold bar? I wasn't angry at a kid for catching a break. I was angry at what it said about me. That after 30 years, I wasn't worth as much noise as a press release for a relative. Angry that I was leaving with a card for coffee while the guy I trained was leaving with rent for months. Angry that thank you for your service came stapled to a discount. And underneath the anger was the thing that keeps you up at night when you're a single dad past 50. The fear that I'd been a placeholder, that I'd given Eli a father who was always at work and a future that's, what, a $25 apology? I forced myself to smile for the sheet cake photos. The frosting tasted like cardboard and sugar. "Speech!" someone yelled. Mark's hand found my shoulder, steering, not supporting. "You've been like a father to so many here," he said, the kind of line you keep in your pocket for last days. I stood there with a mouthful of fake sweet and wanted to say the truth, that sometimes being like a father at work means you're the one they take for granted, the one who stays late, the one they forget to promote because he's steady. But I didn't say any of it. I said the safe things. I said thank you. Because I had a secret, the kind of secret you don't shout in a room full of people who'd love nothing more than to own it. I had a small piece of paper the company never believed in. My name on a provisional patent on a safety sensor and valve assembly I'd built in my garage, with my son holding the flashlight. I had my own receipts, my own timestamps, my own burn scars I hadn't billed them for. And if I said the wrong word, if I admitted too much, they could twist it into ours instead of mine. Have you ever had to hold your own joy like a bomb with the pin yanked, counting the seconds until it was safe to breathe? So I ate my cake. I thanked people who hugged me with one arm while keeping the other hand on their phone. I let them take a group photo with the banner that said, "Happy Retirement, Dan." It looked like a party. It felt like a polite exit. And when the room thinned and the clapping turned to the soft buzz of office gossip, Mark leaned in too close. "Stay reachable," he said, breath like old coffee. "I know you'd want to be a team player." Team player. I felt the words hook into me. Team players don't take their ball home. Team players sign whatever slid across the table. Team players don't own what they build. They borrow it until someone with a better suit shows up. I looked down at that card again. $25. 4 lattes and a tip if I was feeling generous. Somewhere inside a computer, an HR form had declared that plastic square an appropriate farewell for the man who once slept on the break room floor to keep a line running through a snowstorm. Somewhere in a metrics meeting, they'd allocated $12,000 to retain young talent and $25 to retention of morale. What would you do if you realized your life had been budgeted in someone else's spreadsheet? Maybe you'd throw the card in the trash. Maybe you'd make a scene. I did neither. I slid it into my pocket and picked up my little cardboard box. The plant Eli gave me in 5th grade, a chipped mug, a photo of us at the county fair with his arm around my waist like I was a celebrity. I told myself it was just a thing, just plastic, just a room. I told myself the real story was still unwritten. But deep down, I was wrestling with the oldest fear I know, the fear that I'd failed him, that the man walking out with a box was a man who'd given everything to the wrong altar. On my way out, Cody caught me at the door, all bright teeth and cologne. "No hard feelings, right, Unc?" He said it like we were in on a joke together. "Just business." Just business. I wanted to tell him business is why I started sleeping in my car the month after his aunt left when Eli had the flu and I couldn't miss another shift. Business is why I filed a carve-out form the week I was hired, naming any personal inventions I might build on my own time, because I'd seen too many old-timers praised with words and mugged with contracts. Business is why I kept quiet when they laughed at my prototype and called it cute. But I nodded. I said, "Take care, kid," because my father taught me that a man who knows what he holds doesn't need to wave it in the air. Outside, the air hit me colder than it should have. The parking lot smelled like wet asphalt and exhaust and freedom I didn't trust yet. I sat in my truck for a minute, the seatbelt digging into my shoulder, and stared at the envelope. I opened it. Starbucks. Green mermaids smiling at me like she knew how small I felt. I almost laughed. Then I almost cried. Instead, I turned the card over and wrote the date in tiny numbers. I don't know why. Maybe to mark it. Maybe to remember the exact day they told me what I was worth to them. Have you ever driven home with the radio off because the quiet felt safer than the noise in your head? I passed the exit where I'd usually pull in for overtime. Habit tugged at my hands like a ghost. Not today. Not ever again. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. A text from Eli. "You okay? Pick up pizza?" I typed, "Yep, proud of you," and hit send before I could rewrite it into the truth that I was scared. Scared that the mortgage didn't care about dignity. Scared that health insurance ends when the applause does. Scared that my invention, the only bright thread I'd clung to in the dark, might unravel the second someone tugged at it. But here's the part they don't put in retirement speeches. Sometimes keeping your mouth shut is the bravest kind of loud. I had signed nothing. I had filed everything. I had date-stamped photos of solder joints and a lab test receipt tucked into a folder behind the seat. And I had a buyer circling, anonymous, cautious, interested. A listing that might close any day now if I could stay invisible 1 minute longer. 1 minute. 1 night. That's all I needed. I told myself that as I pulled into our driveway, as I saw Eli's face in the window, as I wiped my palms on my jeans so I wouldn't hand him a hug soaked in sweat. I told myself tomorrow will be different, like a prayer you whisper at the edge of a cliff. Can you imagine waking up the next morning and seeing 94 missed calls from the same man who handed you a $25 goodbye? Can you picture your screen lit up like an alarm, text after text, demanding you fix the assignment for something you built with your own 2 hands? I didn't know it then, stepping over the threshold with a box and a plastic card in my pocket. But the party wasn't over. It hadn't even started.
Before the night ended, I learned why 94 missed calls can sound louder than applause, and why sirens can be the sweetest music you'll ever hear.
Fear didn't start with the cake. It started the winter my wife packed a single duffel, left a note on the counter, and drove away without waking our son. Have you ever had to choose between breaking a child's heart at sunrise or pretending your world just cracked in half? Eli was 7. He asked if Mom went to get milk. I said, "Yeah, bud, milk." I kept waiting for the garage door to roll back up. It didn't. I stayed because the health insurance did. Because kids don't care what brand your pride is. They just need inhalers filled and sneakers that fit in September. The plant paid steady if you said yes to everything. Swing shifts, snowstorms, holidays where the parking lot was a white sheet and the pipes knocked like angry ghosts. Ever bargain with yourself at 3 a.m.? One more month, one more overtime, one more promotion that will definitely finally balance the scales. I blinked and a decade slipped. They liked me because I was dependable. That's a word that feels like a medal until it sounds like a lock. I became the guy you called when the line coughed and the sensors lied. I wrote SOPs that lived in binders with someone else's name stuck on the spine because I was too busy fixing the next fire to complain about the credit for the last one. "You're like a father around here," Mark would say, clapping my shoulder with the grip of a man who's already letting go. You know what like a father can mean at work? It means the one who stays late, the one who swallows, the one they love for being the wall they lean on, so long as the wall never asks to move. Then came Cody, Mark's nephew, fresh out of school, sharp enough to be dangerous, the kind of kid who says "unk" with a wink. I didn't hate him. I taught him. I showed him where the gray lay between the diagrams, where the machine listens like a dog if you touch it right. But have you ever trained someone who learns your moves and then gets a key to a door you've been knocking on for years? They'd take my notes and deck them out in buzzwords, and suddenly the same fix that got me a "good job, Dan" got him a spotlight slide at the quarterly. I told myself it was fine. I've always liked a bright student. But every time Mark called Cody our best young talent, something in me whispered, "And what am I? Old talent? Expired talent?" The near miss happened on a gray Tuesday that smelled like burnt oil and cafeteria chili. We were running a line of test tonnage through a valve that had a habit of sticking, the kind of habit that looks like stubbornness until it decides to be lethal. The pressure spiked, the sensor lagged. A rookie, kid with hands still soft, stepped where he shouldn't. I grabbed his collar and yanked just as a seam coughed out a bitter spray that would have painted his face in second-degree science. That hiss. Have you ever heard a hiss that sounds like a clock starting over? It followed me home. I lay in bed that night watching the ceiling fan carve the dark and thought, what if the thing we trust to tell us, "Hey, you're in trouble," is the thing that lies loudest? I started sketching, not because I wanted credit, because I wanted quiet. A sensor that couldn't lie because it didn't have time to. It would fail safe instead of fail pretty. A little brain that watched pressure patterns like a paranoid parent and popped a valve open before the pipe could think about arguing. I don't code pretty. I solder leet. Eli learned to hand me the right gauge of heat shrink without looking. We worked in the garage because the kitchen was for homework and the garage was for hope. Pizza boxes turned into parts bins. Saturday nights turned into design reviews with a kid in Batman pajamas and a pencil behind his ear. Have you ever watched your child's face glow blue under a shop light and felt both 20 and 100 at once? He'd say "we" about the build, and I'd let him, because "we" is a powerful thing when you're raising a boy alone. We scorched a tablecloth. We blew a fuse and the house went quiet except for both of us laughing in the dark. We learned the smell of a resistor dying. And on a morning last fall when the thing finally clicked the way the drawing promised, Eli whooped so loud the neighbor texted to ask if we were okay. I didn't touch company parts. I didn't use company time. That wasn't just morality, it was strategy. First week at the plant, buried in the pile of onboarding was a proprietary information and inventions agreement, the kind that eats with teeth you don't notice until it bites. On the back, in small print, was a carve-out schedule for pre-existing or personally developed inventions not using company resources. I filled it out with an old mentor's voice in my ear. List the idea, not the hope. I described safety lockout and sensor assembly developed off-site,
Personal funds, no company materials. Signed, and, this is the important part, made HR countersigned and dated. I made a copy, 2 copies, one in the freezer in a Ziploc because house fires don't care about your paperwork. We paid out of pocket for a 1-hour session at a university lab to verify our sensor response on calibrated equipment. I slid the receipt into a folder like a lottery ticket. When we finally had a guts and bones prototype, I did a quiet, foolish thing. I asked for a half hour at the brown bag, just to kick around a safety idea, I said. I wasn't looking for green lights or confetti. I was looking for wisdom. Most of the room checked emails while I talked. Mark smiled like a dad filming a dance recital he wasn't really watching. Cody nodded with that lean forward look people put on when they're already thinking about what they're going to say next. I showed him the curve, the way our little brain woke up just before the pipe did. I said, imagine one less near miss a year. Imagine a kid going home because this little thing got nervous before the steel did. When I finished, there was silence, the kind that means no one wants to be the first to say no. Mark rescued them from having to. He cleared his throat, used his folksy voice. Cute hobby, Dan. We're focused on throughput this quarter. Let's not get distracted. Cute hobby. Have you ever had your life's midnight work patted on the head in front of a room that buys the crayons you draw with? I smiled, because that's what you do when you've trained yourself to survive. Inside, something rearranged itself. I realized I was done asking them to see me. If they were going to look, it'd be when the thing was already out in the world with my name on it. So I filed a provisional patent. It's a weird feeling, clicking submit on a piece of yourself. My hands shook. Not because I didn't think it was good, because I knew what it would look like if it was. The provisional gave me a date on record and a year to figure out the rest. I researched marketplaces where independent inventors list, where buyers who don't tell you who they are sniff around with NDAs and cautious questions. I learned phrases like clean chain of title and assignment recordation. I learned how many people think they can talk you into giving away the one thing you finally did right. All the while, life kept being life. Eli turned 16 and wanted to drive. I taught him stick on an empty Sunday lot, knees popping when I got in and out of the car. I skipped my own cardiology follow-up because the copay and the timing were both wrong. Christmas came with a bonus that was a thank you for your loyalty speech and an amount that barely outran inflation. Cody went to a conference in Vegas I'd wanted for 15 years. I stayed and covered his shifts because you're solid, Dan. We know you'll keep the ship steady. The ship, the steady. The way those words stop sounding like praise and start sounding like a reason you'll never be anything else. I told Eli once, late, when the world was soft with sleep and solder smell. You know, bud, sometimes the safest thing is to be a little dangerous on purpose. He frowned. Like wear a helmet but still ride? Kind of. Like build the parachute before you jump, but don't hand the parachute to the guy who pushed you. He didn't laugh. He just nodded like he knew exactly who I meant. When the listing went live, I held my breath for a week. One inquiry. Then it went quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you start doubting whether any of your dates and receipts and scars matter. Have you ever lived long enough with disappointment that hope itself feels like a prank? Then out of nowhere, a serious buyer pinged. Questions in precise language, interest without flattery. They wanted proof of independence. I sent the carve-out, the Polaroids, the university receipt, the CAD file timestamps. I sent the picture of Eli in the Halloween shirt with a sticky note over his face because the world is the world. They wrote back, "Thank you, this is helpful." Meanwhile, at work, Mark started leaning on team more. Be a team player, Dan. That phrase freights a lot, doesn't it? In a company where the team is a halo around the nephew with the fancy title, team player means don't ask for the ball. I could feel it. Some sixth sense you develop when you've spent your life proving you're not a problem. The eyes on me grew warmer and colder at the same time. HR sent a cheerful email about post-employment cooperation. I replied with my standard, happy to cooperate within the scope of my agreements. I typed and deleted, and within the law 3 times. Eli asked me one night, while we were cleaning flux off the tip, "Do you think they know?" "Know what? That you're more than what they clap for?" He said it without bitterness. He said it like a kid handing his dad back a part he almost dropped. I swallowed and told him the truth. Maybe, maybe not. Doesn't change what I have to build. If you've ever been the broke parent at a school event, you know how to wear pride like armor so your kid doesn't see the dings. I sewed a lot of invisible patches onto that armor. The day Eli's science fair ribbon said honorable mention, I took him for burgers like he'd taken state. The day I found an old power bill in the couch cushions 3 weeks past due, I joked that the light company was just testing us. Every small scare stacked into the big one, that I'd be a story he told later that started with, "My dad worked hard," and trailed into silence. So when HR sent the calendar invite for my retirement send-off, I stared at it longer than made sense. 30 years, cordially dismissed between 3:30 and 4 p.m., conference room B, bring your own dignity. I told myself I didn't need a party. I told myself I'd keep my head down, eat a slice of sheet cake, and walk out with a quiet heart like a man who did his time and took his bow. The buyer had circled back the week before with language about a final round of internal approval.
The kind of email that reads like a whisper you don't trust yet. All I needed was another week of being small in rooms that loved me that way. But the thing about small rooms is they love a show. I walked in on retirement day and smelled frosting and seen it all coffee. I could feel eyes rehearsing their goodbye lines. I thought, just smile, just nod, just get out. I didn't know Mark was holding a $25 card in one hand and a $12,000 promise in the other. I didn't know the kid I trained would bow on the stage they never built for me, right while I stepped off it with a box. I didn't know the word team would taste like traitor in my mouth by the end of the afternoon. And I sure didn't know that the quiet, careful paper trail that I'd been building in a garage with my son would be the only thing standing between us and a very expensive lie. Conference room B smelled like sugar and toner, like every goodbye you can't afford to make a scene at. I told myself to keep my head down, bite the cake, nod at the speech, and get out with my dignity folded small in my pocket. But dignity is loud when it gets stepped on, isn't it? Mark started with a script he could have delivered for a stranger. 3 decades of loyalty, a backbone of this team. Have you ever heard your life summarized by someone who only remembers the parts that made their job easier? People clapped like the room was telling itself, "See, we're good people." I was handed an envelope light enough to float. I already knew by the weight it wasn't a check. I slid a thumb under the flap and felt the smooth plastic edge. Starbucks, $25. 4 coffees and a tip if I was feeling generous with a company that never was with me. Have you ever stared at a gift and felt it measure you in front of everybody? My face did that polite smile your mouth learns after enough performance reviews. Inside, a hot shame unfurled its wings. Then Mark turned, same breath, same smile, and clapped Cody on the back. To keep our best young talent from being poached, he said it, savoring the phrase like it was leadership. We're awarding a $12,000 signing bonus and a fast track to production lead. The room broke into the kind of applause that makes windows hum, whistles, "Let's go Cody," that stung like alcohol on a cut. Have you ever watched someone get a future while you get a coffee? I wanted to be bigger than it. I wanted to say, "Good for him," and mean it. But there's a place in your chest that keeps score for all the times you couldn't afford to. I thought of Eli's text, "Proud of you, Dad. We'll celebrate tonight," and felt my throat close. How do you tell your kid your last day looked like a clearance rack goodbye? People lined up for photos. Mark kept a hand on my shoulder like I might wander off before the picture proved how gracious he was. "Speech?" someone yelled. I said the safe things. "Grateful to have learned alongside you. The work matters more than the titles." Have you ever spoken in slogans because the truth would make a mess you can't mop? On the way out, HR ambushed me with a manila folder. "Just the exit packet," Jenna said, smiling the way you smile at a dog so it won't bolt. "Standard non-disparagement, return of property, and this little post-employment IP acknowledgement." She tapped the last page like it was nothing. A box weighted by the line that read, "I affirm I have created no inventions related to company business during my employment outside company supervision." My pulse ticked up. "I'll take this home and read it," I said, pocketing the pen before she could hand it to me. "No rush," she sang, which is HR for "please sign this before you read it. We just want to make sure you stay a team player." Team player. The word stung more now that I wasn't on the team. I kept my mouth shut because my secret needed me to. They could call the garage tinkering, they could call it disloyal, they could try to call it theirs, but they couldn't call it empty. I'd filed the carve-out on day one. I had date-stamped photos with Eli holding the flashlight. I had a receipt from a university lab. I had a provisional patent with my name spelled right. All I had to do was not hand them the rope they were trying to knot. By the time I made it to the parking lot, the applause had shrunk to hallway chatter. The wind needled my eyes. I slid into my truck, stared at the mermaid on the $25 card, and wrote the date on the back with a ballpoint I found under the seat. I don't know why. Maybe to remember exactly when they told me my life came in 4 lattes. What would you do after a day like that? Scream? Quit the planet? I did what single dads do. I picked up pizza. Eli met me at the door like he always does when he hears my boots on the step. "How was it?" he asked, scanning my face like he can tell when I'm lying. "Nice," I said, laying the box on the table like it was a trophy. He's too kind to ask for numbers, but he's not a kid anymore. He knows. He hugged me anyway. Long, like he was trying to hold up part of me that sagged. We ate on paper plates. He brought out the old project notebook, the one with pizza sauce stains and a corner chewed by the dog we don't have anymore. "Remember when we thought the LED was broken and it was just turned backwards?" He grinned. "You said even smart stuff gets turned around sometimes." I could have wept right there under the kitchen light for all the nights this kid watched me try to flip my life the right way. "You ready?" he asked, and my heart didn't know which ready he meant. Ready to be retired? Ready to be broke? Ready to be brave? "I'm ready," I said, and meant, "I'll try." After dishes, he went to finish an essay. I did the ritual, unlocked the file box, counted the paper shields we'd built. Carve-out form with HR's old signature crooked and bored, CAD file printouts with date stamps circled in blue, Polaroids of the build with Eli's arm in frame, Halloween shirt on, mask of plastic vampire teeth grinning near the workbench. I set them in a row like a parent laying out school clothes. "You'll protect us, right?" I whispered to dead trees and ink. My phone buzzed at 9:15 p.m. The subject line was the kind that makes you sit down without meaning to. "Final offer. Action required." The marketplace's logo glowed like a door cracked in a dark hall. The message was short and careful. "We are pleased to inform the bidding process has closed. High bid secured at $1,800,000, subject to verification of clean chain of title and standard diligence. Purchase agreement attached for your review. Please do not discuss with third parties until closing." Have you ever read a number so big it looks like a prank and a dare at the same time? My heart did a double clutch. 1.8 million is a dream and a new kind of fear. The words clean chain of title blinked like hazard lights. Clean meant no one else could claim they owned the thing. Chain meant every link had to hold. Title meant if one page was smudged, the whole bridge fell. I scrolled to the attachment, hands cold. The buyer's name was hidden behind a holding company, neat and bland. The agreement language was sterile and sharp. I forwarded it to the patent attorney who'd filed my provisional, added, "Congrats, do not sign any new docs. Your carve-out and receipts look strong. We'll call at 8 a.m. Stay quiet." Stay quiet. I could do that. I set my phone face down and it lit the ceiling with a square of light anyway. Think of all the times you've stayed quiet because you couldn't afford to be loud. Then imagine staying quiet because you finally can't afford not to. Which quiet is harder? Eli padded out in socks and leaned on the doorframe. "You're thinking loud," he said, squinting at me the way he used to when he was 5 and could tell I'd hidden a cookie. I told him enough of the truth to make the lie gentle.
We might be okay, like for real okay. He nodded, like he had known this before I did. We've been okay, he said, and somehow that hit harder than any number on a screen. I promised we'd celebrate the small way, pancakes, cheap syrup, too much butter, if the big way came through. I turned on Do Not Disturb and made 2 exceptions, Eli and my attorney. I didn't add Mark. I didn't think I needed to. That might be the funniest mistake of my life, in a story that doesn't have many jokes. I put the exit packet on the table, the Starbucks card on top like a paperweight, and stared at them until the mermaid's smile felt like mockery or prophecy. I couldn't tell. Have you ever tried to sleep the night before your life could tilt? It's like arguing with a storm. You count reasons, you count receipts, you count the seconds between hope and dread and call it rest. At 1:07 a.m., I got up to triple-check the carve-out dates against the company's invention policy printout from the year I signed it. At 2:29, I remembered the Polaroid of Eli in the Halloween shirt and put it in the front of the folder. At 3:02, I pictured Mark's face when he said team player and tried to decide if it was a warning or a habit. At 3:40, I finally drifted, not asleep as much as surrendered. Do you know the sound a phone makes when it tries to wake you from a life? It's not the ring, it's the silence after. I rolled over at first light, blinked at the glow on my nightstand, and my breath hitched. 94 missed calls, name after name the same, Mark. Texts stacked like threats dressed as requests. We need to talk. Call me now. Urgent IP matter. Dan, be a team player. Legal will advise. Pick up, pick up, pick up. What would you do if the man who handed you a $25 goodbye suddenly couldn't stop dialing your number? I didn't know why he knew. I didn't know who had told him. I only knew one thing. The quiet I'd chosen about to be broken loud.
The morning punched me awake with numbers. 94 missed calls. Have you ever seen your phone look like a fire you can't stomp out? For a second, panic sprinted ahead of logic. Eli? I thumbed his name first. You good? He yawned into the line. Yeah, Dad. Bus in 10. You okay? Okay. Okay is a stretchy word. Eat, I said, like breakfast could pin the world down. Then I listened to the voicemails. Mark's voice had that strange sheer bosses use when they're holding a lit match. Dan, give me a ring. Little paperwork mix-up. We'll fix it. Team style. Then tighter. Urgent IP concern. Call me now. Then the tell. Our attorneys flagged a patent you filed. We need you to execute the standard assignment so this doesn't get messy. Standard. Messy. Have you ever heard someone try to fold your life into a template? Texts stacked under the missed calls, like a script written by anxiety. We can make this easy. Don't do anything you'll regret. Legal will escalate. Sign the form in your exit packet and email by 9 a.m. Be a team player. I stared at team player until the words stopped meaning anything. Then I did the only smart thing I had left. I called my patent attorney, Reyes. She picked up on the second ring like she'd been staring at her phone too. Morning, Dan. Breathe. Did you sign anything new? No. Good. Do not. Record every call. Save every text. If they're already telling a buyer they own it, that's misrepresentation at best. If they forged anything, it's a felony. Felony. That word changed the temperature of the room. They can't freeze your retirement or your last paycheck without due process, she added, hearing the fear I didn't say. They can try for an injunction, but your carve-out and dated build record puts you on solid ground. Stall, don't argue, and don't let them in your house. As if on cue, a knock knocked like a dare at the door. I peered through the peephole. Cody, hair perfect, jacket too sharp for 8 a.m., bouncing on his heels like a man who thinks time is something you can tap into line. He flashed a check face down like a magician offering to guess my card. We want you taken care of, he said, lowering his voice to confidential. 20 grand is a goodwill gesture, plus we'll put you on a 6-month consulting retainer. All you have to do is sign the standard IP assignment and this tidy NDA. Keeps everything friendly. Friendly. $20,000 is a miracle when the mortgage doesn't blink, and a mosquito bite when a buyer is offering $1.8 million for your name on a thing you bled on. My hands went cold, the way they do when your body prepares to choose between fight and fold. Over Cody's shoulder, through the window, I could see the back of Eli's head as he buttered toast. What would you do when the nephew who got $12,000 for showing up at work offers you $20,000 to vanish your life's work off your porch? I lifted the folder by the edge like it might stain. "I'll review with my counsel," I said. He grinned wider like I told a joke. Totally, just a formality." Inside, assignment of inventions and acknowledgement of proprietary rights, already filled out with my name. Middle initial wrong. The date line read last month. A notary stamp bled at the edges, fuzzy like it had been photocopied too many times. My signature slanted uphill in a way I've never written since 3rd grade. My father taught me to hook the R in my last name like a fish. On their version, the R was straight. "Why is this dated before my retirement?" I asked. "Oh, that's just aligning with policy updates," he said, breezy, as if the calendar can be convinced to move. "Legal said it's fine." He slid the check closer. "We want to make sure you're not exposed." Exposed. I thought of the kid whose collar I yanked before the pipe hissed. I thought of the word felony echoing in my kitchen. I thought of the carve-out form, HR's board countersignature like an old ghost rising from a drawer. I pulled my phone from my pocket and tapped voice memos with my thumb inside my jacket, the way you do when you decide the truth is safer than silence. "Who prepared this?" I asked. "Legal," he said. "Who notarized?" "In-house. We have an in-house notary?" "We do now," he said too fast. He angled his body, a soft shove towards my doorway. I didn't step back. "We can do this at the table," he offered, tilting his head towards the kitchen. 10 minutes and you're 20 grand richer." Over his shoulder, the bus squealed at the corner. Eli grabbed his backpack. I called out, casual for his sake, "Good one, bud." He came to the door, took in Cody, the folder, my jaw. His eyes narrowed the way they do when he solves for X in his head. "Love you," he said, like a password. "Love you too." The lock clicked behind him. The house felt smaller and stronger without an audience. Cody cleared his throat. "Look, Unc, let's not make this weird. The company owns anything related to our field built while you're employed. It's in the agreement you signed. So is my carve-out." His smile didn't move, but the edges of it got nervous. "Sure, but legal says this device is adjacent. Safer if we just put it under the umbrella." He tapped the NDA. "And you can't mention it to anyone, of course. Buyer relationships are sensitive." "Buyer." The word was a flare. "What buyer?" I asked too quickly. He flashed friendly again, the cheap kind. "I know you can't say," he said, "but it's simple. Sign, we take care of the rest, you consult for 6 months, everybody wins." He raised the check like a toast. "We already sent the assignment last night." Silence is a teacher. "What you sent last night?" I said, soft. "The assignment," he repeated, only now his eyes darted. "The one you're about to sign." He heard it too late. He tried to rewind with grin that wouldn't stick. My heart slowed. That strange calm that shows up when the danger finally shows its name. "Email me a PDF of what you sent," I said. "I'll review it with counsel." He paled. "We can't. Legal." "Then it doesn't exist." And I held his gaze until he looked away. He leaned on the rail, dropped his voice. "Listen, off the record, Mark doesn't want this to get ugly. He said you were like a father to him." The words hit me differently now, cheap and sticky. "So let us fix it. If you dig in, legal goes nuclear. They'll file an injunction. They'll freeze the sale. They'll make your life expensive." Have you ever had a man threaten you with a storm you think you've never weathered? I let him talk until he ran out of adjectives. Then I said, "Put any claim you think you have in writing. Send it to my lawyer." I handed the folder back without the check. He pushed it at me again. "Just hold on to it," he said, but his hands were shaky now, the first tremor of someone who realizes the script doesn't fit the scene. As he walked down the steps, my phone vibrated with a new email. Subject, "Assignment received, please confirm," from an address I didn't recognize. My stomach turned, not from fear now, but from recognition. The buyer, or the buyer's shadow. I didn't open it yet. I forwarded it to Reyes with one line. "They said they already sent the assignment last night, recording attached."
Her reply landed in under a minute. Good, do not respond. Save everything. This just crossed into potential wire fraud if they transmitted and forged assignment to induce a sale. Keep Cody talking if he comes back. I'm looping in buyer's counsel. I looked down at the Starbucks card still on the counter, at the mermaid grinning up like she knew where this was going. 94 missed calls behind me, a forged signature in a folder I didn't take, a boy with a backpack disappearing down the block, trusting me to be the kind of dad who doesn't sell their future for a quiet meaning. Have you ever felt a line harden in you didn't know was there? I hit save on the voice memo. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb except for Reyes, and when Cody's text buzzed 30 seconds later, "Hey, Unc, sending a DocuSign to make it easier," I didn't tap it. I took a breath that tasted like steel and said out loud to an empty porch, "No."
The email from the shadow address sat in my inbox like a live wire. Subject, assignment received. Please confirm. Have you ever felt your name used in a sentence you didn't speak? I didn't click it. I forwarded it to Reyes and paced a path into the kitchen tile, the Starbucks card staring up like a joke the universe wouldn't stop telling. Reyes called. "Good," she said, voice steady enough to borrow. "They're sloppy. If they transmitted a forged assignment to the buyer, that's a false representation across wires. Save it all." She had me forward the voicemail, audio, the text thread, the photo of the backdated assignment Cody tried to slip me. "Breathe," she said again, which is how you know someone's seen this fight before. Then HR called. Jenna, the same soft tone from yesterday, like she was about to read me bedtime stories. "Hey, Dan, there's been some confusion on post-employment paperwork. We'd like to resolve this quietly. If you can just sign the standard acknowledgement, no need to involve outside counsel. We'll make sure your benefits transition smoothly." No need to involve outside counsel. Have you ever noticed how people who swear it's simple also swear you shouldn't bring a witness? I kept my voice even. "Send any claims in writing to my attorney." She did that inhale smile you can hear. "Oh, there's no claim, just housekeeping." "Then there's nothing to sign," I said. A beat. The friendliness curdled. "Legal will escalate." She hung up before her tone could finish changing. I pulled the folder out of the lockbox and spread the pages across the table like armor. Carve out with HR signature from 30 years ago. Crooked, bored, beautiful. The provisional patent filing receipt, dated CAD exports, university lab invoice, Polaroids with metadata stamped in the corners like little time machines. Eli slipped into the chair across from me, backpack already slung for the bus he just caught and missed. "Dad," he touched the Halloween picture, "you look younger here." I laughed once, rough. That's because hope is a light. It makes everybody look better. My phone pinged. Reyes again. She'd looped in buyer's counsel on a thread so sharp it could cut meat. They wrote back inside 10 minutes. "We have received a purported assignment from company name, claiming ownership of the subject invention. Please confirm inventor's position. Attached is the executed document we received." I clicked the attachment. My chest went cold. It was my name on a PDF I had never seen, next to a jagged e-signature that tried to mimic the way my hand hooks the R in my last name and failed. The notary stamp was blurry. The commission number was 1 digit off. The witness line had a name I recognized, a receptionist who'd brought cupcakes to birthdays and suddenly was a legal event. The date said last month. 2 weeks before my retirement party, the same week I'd been covering Cody's swing shift while our best young talent went to Vegas. Reyes called back before the bile finished climbing. "You see it? I see it. Good. Save the file and don't respond to the buyer directly. We'll reply on your behalf. We'll also alert the state AG if needed." She paused. Then, "Dan, this isn't just mean. This is stupid and criminal. That's a blessing. Stupid criminals leave fingerprints." Have you ever felt your fears shift from "what if I'm not enough" to "what if I actually win"? It's disorienting. I stood at the sink watching the neighbor's sprinkler hit the same slice of lawn over and over and let that new fear settle in my bones next to the old kind. My phone buzzed again, this time a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. Mark's voice, not the boss voice, the cornered man voice. "Dan, I hear there's confusion. Don't make this adversarial. We can be generous." Generous. He meant we can pay you to disappear. He also meant we already told people we own you.
Another ping, buyer's counsel again, this time attaching the email Mark had sent them. Per our policy, all related IP developed by employees belongs to the company. Attached is the assignment from Mr. My Name. We can move forward on wire upon your confirmation. Wire. Mark was that comfortable spending money that wasn't mine to spend. Comfortable enough to push an email that could end his career out into the world like a paper boat in a storm. Reyes's next message was short and surgical. We have what we need to freeze them and loop in authorities. Do not engage with Mark. If he shows up, do not let him in. Record. I opened voice memos again and set it to sit on my phone's home screen like a panic button. That's when the fear I carried for years tried its last old trick. It whispered about mortgages and premiums and how long court takes. It told me I couldn't feed a family a lawsuit. It dressed up as pragmatism and called itself wise. Have you ever had cowardice steal your father's voice? I almost listened. Then Eli put his palm flat on the carve-out paper, like he was swearing something more than an oath. You always told me the only people who say it's just a signature are the ones who need it to be more than that. You kept receipts, Dad. Let them use their copies. We have the originals. I didn't know whether to smile or apologize for making him grow up in a house where these were the things he knew. Instead, I put my hand over his. I'm not signing, I said. Saying it out loud planted it deeper. Mark texted then, not the group be a team player blast, but a solo message that reeked of sweat through cologne. I'm swinging by. Let's settle this like men. Like men. Have you noticed how often like men is code for without witnesses? I replied exactly one thing. Send your claims to my attorney. He sent an address, not mine. Company parking lot, noon. He thought he was still giving orders. He thought I was still the guy who stayed late and swallowed. I left him on red. A new number rang. This is Investigator Shaw with State Department of Justice, a woman said, voice the sound of equivalent to a raised eyebrow. Mr. My Name. We received a referral from counsel regarding a potentially forged IP assignment transmitted in connection with an asset sale. I have a few questions. Questions like anchors. I answered carefully, sticking to dates and documents. She asked if I had any direct communications indicating knowledge of the forgery. I told her about Cody's slip. We already sent the assignment last night. She said, save that recording. Do not alter anything, even file names. We may need to image your phone. Do not, under any circumstances, sign or destroy anything. Are you safe? I looked at the door. For now, I said. Good. If anyone arrives at your home uninvited, call this number immediately. I hung up, and the kitchen felt like a courtroom and a bunker and the garage again, all at once. The air buzzed. I realized I was braced for an impact I couldn't see yet. I realized I was ready. I cataloged everything digital and physical. I exported my phone logs. I snapped photos of the exit packet with the IP acknowledgement HR tried to sandwich between return your badge and change your passwords. I took a picture of the $25 card with the date I'd written on the back because petty proof is still proof. I laid the Polaroids on a towel like newborns. I stuck Post-its to each with a one-line note. Halloween shirt, 2 years ago, garage heater, broken night. University lab receipt, calibrated run, signature of the tech. I was building a museum no one would ever visit but me and the people who tried to burn it down. At 11:07, a text from Cody. We should talk before Unc gets here. He corrected Mark, then lol. Autocorrect doesn't know what to do with honesty. At 11:41, Reyes. Buyer counsel wants to do a joint call with DOJ at 1 p.m. Can you make it? Could I make a call that might decide whether my future arrived in a wire or dripped out in court filings over years? Yes, I typed. Then, thank you. At 11:58, a shadow crossed the front window. Not a delivery driver, not a neighbor. Heavy knock. The kind that argues with your lock. My spine straightened like someone had tugged a string to the top of it. Eli, back early for a forgotten textbook because the universe writes in coincidences, froze halfway down the stairs. His eyes were huge but not panicked. He whispered, armor, and disappeared into his room. I put my phone in my breast pocket, voice memos live, and opened the door just wide enough to be a boundary. Mark stood there with a face like a thundercloud and a folder too thin to hide the fact that it wasn't about truth, it was about pressure. Cody hovered a step behind, long on bravado, short on ideas. "Let's not make this formal," Mark said, that rehearsed fatherly tone back in his throat like a trick he hoped still worked. "We're here to help you help us. Have you ever looked at a man and seen every time you let him be bigger than he was?" I did. Then I stepped onto the porch and pulled the door shut behind me until the latch caught like a period at the end of a sentence. "Help me?" I said. "By fixing the lie you sent last night?" Mark blinked. The performance slipped. "You're confused," he said. "That's a standard form. You signed a version years ago. I signed a carve-out, protecting things I built off-site with my money, my tools, my time. You countersigned. HR did too. The notary on your assignment doesn't exist in the state database. Your commission number is a digit off, and your nephew said you sent it before I signed." I let each word find its place. He opened his mouth, closed it. Cody's jaw worked like gum in church. "We can make you whole," Mark tried, reaching for generosity like spare change. "My whole isn't for sale," I said. "How do you tell a man who gave you a $25 goodbye that your dignity doesn't fit in his budget line?" His face hardened. There it was, the real him. "Legal will bury you," he said, and leaned in like breath could bully. Over his shoulder, down the street, a siren found its opening notes in the daytime, far, then closer. He didn't hear it yet. I did. For the first time all day, my pulse didn't speed up. It steadied. I kept my voice level. "Put every word you just said in an email," I told him. "CC your legal, CC mine, CC the buyer, and CC the investigator who will be here in about 2 minutes. His eyebrows knit. "What investigator?" he said, but his hands had started to fidget, and Cody's neck flushed blotchy up to his ears. "Have you ever felt the ground tilt toward you after years of fighting gravity?"
It's subtle and sudden. Mark took a breath to bellow. The siren rounded our block, tires on asphalt, doors opening, and for a breath's width of a moment, I saw our whole history between us. The nights I stayed, the mornings he took, the way he always called me like a father when he needed a wall to lean on. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I let the sound come. The siren threaded the air like a promise. Faint, then closer. Mark didn't hear it yet. Cody did. His eyes flicked down the street and back to me, calculating whether sound could be ignored into silence. Have you ever stood with your back to your own door and realized this patch of porch is the only courtroom you'll ever need? Mark tried on the fatherly voice that used to loosen my spine. "Let's not make this a scene, Dan. No need for drama." He held out a cleaned-up assignment, a notary stamp so fresh the ink still looked wet. The dateline was today, like they thought the right numbers in the right order could baptize a forgery into truth. "You can't condition benefits on signing away something you don't own," I said, my voice steady in a way I didn't recognize until I heard it. Policy 8.3 acknowledges personal inventions developed off-site without company resources. My carve-out schedules that. You countersigned. I tapped my pocket where the copy lay like a heartbeat. Your update last quarter doesn't reach backward in time. Have you ever watched a man's face recalibrate when you don't play the part he wrote? Mark blinked. "You're misunderstanding," he said, shifting to gaslight like a car into second gear. "Anything related to our field is the company's." "Then you own half the town's home gardens and 3 Etsy shops," I said. "Mine isn't related. Mine is specifically carved out, dated, documented, tested with my own money and my kid's flashlight. If the company wanted to own it, you should have funded it when I asked you to stop calling it a hobby." Cody tried to wedge himself between us with a grin that had lost its power. "Stop calling me that," I said, and the sharp in my voice startled even me. He held up the check again, like paper could hypnotize. 20 grand today. We can bump the retainer. 10K a month. Easy work. We'll even, help Eli out this summer. Internship. Pad his college apps." He thought he was dangling a gift. It sounded like a leash. "What would you do if a man offered your son as a bullet point in a bribe?" I swallowed the burn in my throat. "Don't say his name," I said. "You don't get to put my kid on your spreadsheets." Mark leaned in slow, like proximity could smother truth. "Buddy," he said, low, like he could smother truth with just talk. "You don't want to fight us. There are a dozen ways we can make this complicated. You'll spend your little savings on attorneys just to end up signing anyway. I'm offering dignity." Dignity, from the man who gave me $25 to say goodbye. I almost laughed. Instead, I let him hear his own word bounce back. Dignity is not something you can grant. It's what I keep when I don't take your deal. My phone vibrated against my ribs, a small animal trapped. A text from Reyes flashed on my watch. "Agents en route. Keep him outside. Keep him talking. Do not engage physically." She followed it with another. "Buyers, investigators, and state AG looped. Ask who prepared the doc. Confirm he sent it yesterday." I took a half step back, not in retreat, but to put my heel over the threshold, a line. "Who drafted this cleaned-up assignment?" I asked, nodding to the folder. Mark didn't hesitate. "Legal." "Names," I said. "Who notarized?" He squinted at Cody. Cody swallowed. "We can get that," which is another way of saying, "we don't have it." "And yesterday," I said, light, casual, like you asked the weather, "did you already send an assignment to the buyer?" Cody jumped in too fast. "We, forwarded the packet for preliminary review, yeah." "Packet containing my executed assignment?" I asked. His mouth opened, shut. He tried to rewind the tape. "Containing a draft," he said, voice gone papery. "So not signed by me?" Mark's jaw ticked. "It's a formality," he said, tone flipping cards, looking for one that wins. "Show me the power of attorney where I authorized you to sign for me." Silence thickened. A neighbor across the street, Mrs. Patel, the one who brings us leftover samosas at Diwali, had paused with her hose and her phone half raised, eyes narrowed, watching. Witnesses changed the weather. Mark noticed her. His temper flared, quick and mean. "You're blowing up our quarter for some garage toy. We already told them we own it. If this falls through because you want to play petty king of a paper castle..." He stopped himself, too late. I felt it click. There it was, clean and ugly. "You already told them you owned it," I repeated, calm on purpose, letting every syllable be recorded. "Legal handles the paperwork," he said, palms up, innocence rehearsed. "If there was a mix-up, we'll fix it internally." Internally. Like the wrong notary stamp, like the wrong commission number, like the receptionist who never saw me sign. I watched his face when I said receptionist and knew I'd hit something true. Cody's voice softened, pleading through panic. "Dan, please, just help us help you. You're like family." Family. The word on his tongue made my ribs feel like a cage. Have you ever realized how often people will try to use love to hand you your keys? I breathed in, the kind of breath you take when you decide your life won't be managed by other people's emergencies. Another buzz on my watch. Buyer's counsel. On our way with investigator. Do not let documents leave your possession. Confirm he brought any originals. I eyed the folder in Mark's hand, the sad thinness of it. "You bring any originals?" I asked. He sneered. "We don't need originals," he said, something bitter inside the smirk. "We have authority." "Then you won't mind when I read this back to the people you sent it to." I tapped my pocket recorder. He reached for the doorframe like he could anchor himself inside my house by touching wood I paid for. Reflex lifted my hand, not to push him, but to plant a flat palm in the space between us. "Do not," I said, quietly, "step into my home." His eyes went hard. "Don't threaten me," he snapped. "This is trespass if you won't let me speak to you." "You're speaking," I said, and tilted my head toward the porch steps. "Outside." Siren, now enough to vibrate the window glass, rolled into our street and cut. Two unmarked sedans with light bars tucked into their grills slid to the curb. Doors. Footsteps. The porch boards hummed under my heels with the tremor of boots on concrete. Mark's neck flushed an unbecoming red.
Cody's bravado detached from his face and hovered like a mask he could no longer wear. Have you ever felt the exact second a bully realizes the playground got bigger than him? It's a quiet snap, like a twig under winter snow. Mark tried a last shapeshift. He softened his voice, reached for a memory we shared. Dan, come on. After everything, after I put food on your table with those overtime hours, don't do this. I put food on my table, and on yours when the line coughed at midnight and you needed someone to keep your quarter alive. Footsteps broke the air between us. A woman's voice, clipped and calm. Good morning. Investigator Shaw, State Department of Justice. A second voice. Counsel for My Name, Mr. My Name. We spoke by email. They stepped onto the walk where the concrete meets the first stair, badges out, not asking permission, but offering order. Mark turned, ready to charm, ready to spin. I didn't move. I let the gap between us fill with people who weren't on his payroll. I let the porch remember it was mine, and I let the words I'd been carrying for years sit on my tongue, unshaken. You forged my name. You lied about what you owned, and I'm not small anymore.
Investigator Shaw took the bottom step like it belonged to her. Mr. My Name? I nodded. She turned to Mark without looking away from me. And you are? Mark straightened his tie into a personality. I'm Mark Last Name, VP of Operations. We're here to resolve a simple IP misunderstanding with a former employee. Simple misunderstanding. Have you ever noticed how people rename a fire steam when they're holding the match? Buyer's counsel, gray suit, careful eyes, lifted a folder thicker than Mark's entire argument. Mr. My Name, we received an executed assignment purporting to transfer your patent rights from Ent Company to us. He slid a printed copy from a plastic sleeve and held it where the sun could see it. It bears your name. He didn't say signature. He looked at me. I shook my head once, not mine. Shaw let the silence settle. Mr. VP, she said cool, walk me through when and how you obtained this man's signature. Mark's smile went managerial. As an employee, he was obliged to assign. We processed that administratively. Shaw cocked an eyebrow. By processed, do you mean forged? Cody blurted, We have DocuSign authorizations, then stopped like he stepped off a curb he couldn't see. Shaw turned to him, a small pivot of interest. Name? Cody. He swallowed the rest. Title? Production lead, he mumbled, like it tasted wrong out loud. Shaw held up the page, tapping the notary stamp with one red fingernail. This commission number belongs to a deceased notary. The Secretary of State's database shows her commission expired 5 years ago. Who applied this stamp? Mark went pale under his sunburn. Our legal team handled the logistics. Buyer's counsel slid out another sheet, an email printout with Mark's name bolded at the top. You transmitted this executed assignment at 11:42 p.m. last night, representing clear title. We wired a hole to our bank pending confirmation. He paused, and the words bank and wired hung between us. We are now presuming fraud. Have you ever watched a man's future pass through his face? First outrage, then calculation, then a dawning that the ground doesn't listen to bluster. Mark tried to rally. We acted in good faith based on policy. Shaw's mouth did a half smile that wasn't kind. Policy doesn't supersede criminal statute. She shifted her attention to me, voice softening by 1 degree. Sir, do you have documentation that this invention was developed off-site with personal funds outside company resources? I swallowed and nodded. I do. May I see it? Inside, on the table. She glanced at the threshold, then back to me. With your permission? With mine, I said, loud enough for Mark to hear he didn't matter here. We stepped 2 feet into my kitchen, the exact 2 feet that made it mine, and I laid the armor out like communion. The carve-out with HR's board countersignature, 30 years old and priceless now. The provisional filing receipt, the university lab invoice, the CAD export dates, Polaroids with Eli's Halloween fangs grinning accidentally from the corner of a frame like a timestamp God made just for us. Shaw didn't touch it first, just looked the way a mechanic listens to an engine, head tilted, gathering truth from the whine. Then she nodded and took photos with a state-issued phone, each click a small, clean verdict. We returned to the porch. Mrs. Patel stood on her lawn holding a hose that had stopped spraying at a phone that hadn't. 2 other neighbors pretended to check mail that had been sitting safe in their boxes for hours.
Witnesses lengthened the porch. Shaw faced Mark again, polite gone. "Mr. Lastname, you are being detained for questioning regarding suspected forgery of a notarized instrument, criminal possession of a forged instrument, and attempted wire fraud. You are not under arrest at this moment. You may remain here and answer questions, or you can accompany us downtown." He puffed up, ready to lawyer. "I'll answer nothing without counsel." "That's your right," she said. "Please place your hands where I can see them." Buyer's counsel didn't look at Mark when he spoke next. He looked at me. "Mr. My Name, thank you for your cooperation. We're prepared to proceed with the purchase contingent on a sworn declaration that you did not assign rights to End Company and an indemnity limited to your personal representations. We will also seek restitution of our diligence costs from End Company. In the interim, we're instructing our bank to hold any outgoing funds pending confirmation." He paused, and the corporate tone softened for one beat. "We're sorry this happened." Mark snapped. "You can't just... You're overreacting. This is a clerical..." Shaw cut him off with a hand that handcuffed worse. "Mr. Lastname, step down onto the walk." He didn't. He took a half step toward me, outrage borrowing muscle memory. An agent appeared at his shoulder like a comma where he'd planned an exclamation. "Sir," the agent said, firm. "Hands." Cody flinched, the check in his fingers fluttering to the porch like a white flag nobody asked for. Have you ever expected triumph to feel like fireworks and realized it feels like quiet? As they turned Mark, cuffing his wrists in front instead of behind, a courtesy for a man in a nice shirt, relief didn't roar. It settled. It moved into the space where fear had been renting for years and paid in cash. He tried to twist enough to catch my eye. "You did this to me," he hissed, wild and small. I thought of Eli buttering toast, of our garage heater wheezing, of the Halloween shirt, of 30 years of yes. "I owed my son," I said. He heard it. He flinched like the words had weight. Shaw read his rights with the even cadence of someone who believes in rules more than men. "You have the right to remain silent." The porch heard it. The street heard it. I heard it. The words I'd always associated with other lives, other mistakes, became the punctuation at the end of my sentence. "We're done here." Cody tried to step into the space his uncle had filled for so long. "What about me?" he asked Shaw, a wobble under the words. "Am I in trouble?" She didn't comfort him. She didn't bite either. "You'll be contacted. Preserve all documents and devices. Do not delete anything. Get counsel." He nodded too fast, eyes glassing over, a kid at the edge of a pool he didn't know was deep. Buyer's counsel handed me a crisp envelope. "Our declaration template," he said. "We can notarize on site." He glanced toward the street where a third car had arrived, this one with a woman in a blazer carrying a slim case and a notary seal that matched the database. "We prefer clean paper," he added with the ghost of a smile. Have you ever signed your name and felt it stitch a wound closed? I sat on the porch step where Eli ties his shoes and wrote the letters like I learned them in 3rd grade, the hook on the R the way my father taught me. The notary watched, checked my ID, stamped the paper with a thump that felt like a gavel. Buyer's counsel slid copies into a folder, and his voice shifted back to corporate surety. "Once we have counsel's final clearance and recordation confirmation, we'll wire." As they guided Mark down the walk, a thought occurred to me I didn't know could exist next to my anger. Pity. Have you ever pitied a man who would never spare you the same? It wasn't for his cuffs. It was for the smallness he'd chosen all these years and called it power. Power makes other people big too. What he had was something else. He twisted once more. "You did this to me," he spit. I didn't answer. Shaw did. "No, you did." She closed the cruiser door, and his reflection in my window became one more shape in the glass you stop noticing after you finally learn not to watch it. When the cars pulled away, the street exhaled. Mrs. Patel lowered her hose, rainbow glittering for 1 second in the spray like the universe couldn't help itself. Cody stood holding the check like a man who had no idea what to do with paper. He looked at me. For a heartbeat, I saw the kid I'd tried to teach something honest, how a machine listens, how a man should. He started, then swallowed the apology like a pill he wasn't sure would work. "Expect a subpoena," Shaw called over her shoulder. He flinched, then jogged after his uncle's mess, phone already to his ear. Buyer's counsel lingered. "We'll email you the closing checklist. One more thing. We'll need to confirm the carve-out is recorded with your original employment agreement." I handed him the freezer-burned copy in a Ziploc bag because sometimes paranoia is just good planning. He actually smiled. "You kept this in a freezer?" "Fire doesn't negotiate," I said. He nodded, professional gratitude in his eyes. "Neither does proof."
Have you ever felt your house change sizes around you, shrink from threat, swell with safety? The door clicked behind me like a friend. The table was still a battlefield, papers askew, Polaroids nudged out of order, Starbucks card face down like someone ashamed to be seen. My phone buzzed once more. Reyes. "You did good," she texted. "You free at 1 p.m. for the joint call?" I typed back, "Yes." And then, before I could overthink dignity and tone, "Thank you for everything." Eli cracked his door and peered down the stairs. "Is it over?" he asked. "How do you answer that when over is a moving target?" "The hard part's over," I said. "The good part's next." He came down slow, eyes sweeping the room like a soldier checking corners. "Did they hurt you?" "No," I said. He nodded and picked up a Polaroid that had slid under a chair. The Halloween shirt, his grin all teeth and baby fat. "We should put this one on the fridge," he said, like a trophy. Have you ever had a kid hand you back your life like it was always yours? I took the magnet shaped like a slice of pizza and pinned that small square to cheap white metal. It looked beautiful. It looked expensive. It looked like exactly what it was. Proof. At 12:11 p.m. my email pinged, cleared to close upon title confirmation. Expect recordation number by 3 p.m. The subject line was dry. My hands were not. I stared out the window at the curve in the street where the cruisers had turned, where the siren had once cut the day open, and let a new silence fill the house. Not fear, not waiting, something else. Have you ever stood in the middle of your ordinary kitchen and felt wealth you can't count humming under your feet? Not money, though money was on its way. Worth. The kind you don't need a suit to say out loud. The kind you can eat pancakes off of and still recognize as gold. The wire hadn't hit yet. Paper still had to move through hands, but the thing that mattered had already moved. We weren't small anymore. We weren't guests in our own lives. The porch was mine. The name was mine. And for the first time in a long time, the next knock I was waiting for was gentle.
The joint call on 1 p.m. felt like standing on a bridge you built yourself and hearing other engineers say, "Yeah, it holds." Reyes, buyer's counsel, investigator Shaw, voices steady, words tight. They walked through the chain. My carve-out, my timestamps, my lab receipt, the notary mismatch on the forged assignment. Have you ever listened to strangers arrange your life into a story that finally makes sense? Buyer's counsel kept it clinical. "We'll need a sworn declaration of non-assignment plus assignment from you to us. We'll record with USPTO immediately upon execution. Wire on confirmation." I signed what was mine to sign. A real notary, eyes kind and stamp crisp, pressed a circle into paper that felt like a door unlocking. 10 minutes later, an email landed. USPTO assignment recordation submitted, temporary tracking number. It was the first official line in the system I'd worked around all my life that finally had my name standing alone. The next hour was checklists and the kind of waiting that hums. Eli hovered in the doorway with a glass of water, like he could help by hydrating me. "You okay?" he asked. "Okay," that stretchy word again. "I think so," I said. "We're past the steep part." He nodded like a foreman signing off on a job he both knew was done right. At 2:52 p.m., a new email pinged. USPTO assignment recordation complete, reel and frame. I read the numbers out loud like coordinates to a place I'd always wanted to live. Buyer's counsel replied with a single line, clear to wire. Have you ever had relief make your hands heavy? My bank called 5 minutes after the notification hit. A woman with a voice like clean paper asked me to verify that I was expecting an inbound wire for $1,800,000 and 0 cents. I said yes and had to sit down because the number made my knees untrustworthy. Funds may reflect first as pending before posting. We may place a brief hold on a portion due to fraud protocols. Standard. Standard for once didn't feel like a trap. "Thank you," I said, and meant it so much I had to say it twice. The push notification arrived at 3:19 p.m. Incoming wire, $1,800,000. My name above the numbers. My chest did this odd, quiet thing. Like a sob and a laugh decided they could share the room. I didn't shout. I didn't pump a fist. I put my phone face down and pressed my palms to the table on either side of the Starbucks card, breathing like a man who'd been underwater and finally remembered how to surface.
Eli watched me like you watch a stove the first time it turns on after a power outage. Is it? It is, I said. He didn't whoop. He walked around the table and put his hand between my shoulders, and we stood there, both of us steadying the other. Have you ever felt a kid hold you up like you used to hold him up to reach the drinking fountain? Practical lights started going on in my head. Taxes. I called a CPA Reyes recommended. He talked about estimated payments and safe harbors and the difference between capital gains and ordinary income depending on how the deal was structured. He said words like set aside 40% to be safe, and for the first time in my life, I wrote a number with 2 commas in the set aside column, and I didn't feel like I was pretending. We opened a separate high-yield account just for tax and attorney escrows. I transferred big, safe chunks and watched the available balance shrink to something still unbelievable. Then I paid off the house. Have you ever clicked a button and felt a chain fall off somewhere you couldn't see? The mortgage portal gave me a number that always used to make my heart race like a chase scene. I hit payoff. The website did a small spin like it needed a second to decide my fate, and then it said $0.00, paid in full. I printed the letter and taped it to the fridge next to the Polaroid of Eli in his Halloween shirt, and for a minute, the cheap white door of an old appliance looked like the wall of a museum. We didn't go out to celebrate. We made pancakes. Too much butter, syrup that isn't good for you. Eli flipped them like frisbees and I pretended to catch. We laughed the way you only laugh when the wolf you've been hearing for years turns out to be a neighbor's dog and he's finally gone. In the middle of the second batch, I pulled the Starbucks card from my pocket and slid it across the counter like a poker chip. Eli raised an eyebrow. High roller, he said. We both cracked. Tears, but the easy kind. We'll use it, I said. Someday when we remember. He spun it between his fingers like a trick coin and then set it back down, face up, the mermaid looking less like mockery now and more like a witness. The next morning I opened a trust. Reyes's firm recommended a lawyer who spoke human as well as legal. We set up a revocable living trust with Eli as beneficiary and me as trustee, with provisions so he didn't get a fire hose of money the day he turned 18 and drown. 2 keys, the lawyer said, drawing a simple diagram, one for now, one for later. I wrote Eli a letter to go in the folder with the trust documents. This isn't hush money, it's runway. It's not a debt you owe me, it's a promise I kept to myself years ago when you were asleep in the garage next to the room, and I decided the story would not end with, my dad worked hard, and a long silence. We set aside a chunk for school, not because he has to go, but because I want him to choose from more than what's left. We set aside a chunk for Eli and Dad ideas, because I watched his eyes light up in that garage, and I know the difference it makes to have a little money to burn and a safe place to mess up. Have you ever bought your kid time? It's the most expensive thing in the world, and somehow cheaper than every mistake you don't make because you had breathing room. Then I went back to the high school and asked the shop teacher if the soldering irons still ran too cool. He laughed the cautious laugh of public education. Sometimes, he said. We sat at a metal stool with initials carved into the edge and drew up a small grant I could fund every year for kids who wanted to build something real. We named it after my first mentor on the line, a man who taught me that you listen to a machine with your hands as much as your ears. The first recipients were 2 girls who made a heat-sensor doorbell that flashes for their deaf grandma. They cried when they won. I cried in the parking lot where no one could see. A week later, a letter found us. Real paper, real stamp, handwritten return address I almost didn't recognize. A kid I mentored in the plant years ago, Miguel, now a foreman across town. Saw your name on a docket in the news, he wrote. Saw the rest of the story in the whispers that followed. We always knew. You weren't invisible. I kept that letter where I used to keep late notices, and every time I opened the drawer, the world tilted the right way for a second. Cody texted an apology 3 times, each version more honest than the last. The first was corporate. Sorry for any confusion. The second had a crack in it. I panicked and did what he told me. The third was just a sentence that didn't try to fix me so he could fix himself. I'm sorry I used your kindness as cover. I didn't respond for a week, not out of spite, out of calibration. Then I wrote, own what you did. Tell the truth when they ask. Be better than the room you're in. He wrote back, trying. I hope he is. Mark, The news came slow, the way consequences do. An indictment, then a plea. Wire fraud, criminal possession of a forged instrument, restitution to the buyer for diligence costs, a fine that was a gnat to a man who'd been paid in multiples of my salary for years, and a mountain now that his chair was gone. Disbarment from serving as an officer of any public company for a decade. 27 months in federal prison. Low security, the kind where you can see sunlight, but not the sky the way you want it. Have you ever read a man's sentence and felt nothing like vengeance? Just this even quiet where your pulse should be. He made his choices. I made mine. We served our time in different rooms. People asked if I'll ever cash the Starbucks card. I keep it in a drawer with the trust documents and Miguel's letter. Not out of spite, out of gratitude. It's a small, perfect reminder that other people's budgets don't measure my worth. When I touch it, I remember fluorescent lights and polite claps, yes, but I also remember sirens that sang and the way Eli's hand felt on my back when the wire hit. I remember the first pancake, too much butter, easy tears. We celebrated small on purpose for a while. Grocery store flowers on a Thursday, new wiper blades and the good light bulbs instead of the cheap ones that hum. Have you ever realized how much of being poor is a soundtrack of small annoyances? Quiet is expensive. We bought some. We paid the dental bill that had been moving from pile to pile. I made the cardiology appointment I'd skipped, and when the nurse asked if stress was an issue, I laughed in a way that made her frown, then relax when I said, "Not this month." Eli asked what I'll do now. "Sleep," I said. He rolled his eyes. After that, I thought about consulting. Not for them. Somewhere that doesn't think team player means don't own your name. Maybe I'll teach a night class about practical safety engineering, about how to hear metal argue with itself and how to make it stop. Maybe I'll just sit in the garage, now warm, and build things that don't need to be sold to be worth the hours. One afternoon, we did use the Starbucks card. Not because we needed the coffee, because I wanted to see what 4 lattes and a tip looked like when they weren't an insult. We sat by the window and Eli told me a story about a friend's band, and I watched people in suits and scrubs and aprons go by, and I thought about how most of us are hauling around a box from some conference room, measuring ourselves by envelopes and applause. Have you ever felt rich because you could finally stop asking rooms to clap? The last piece of paper arrived in the mail 10 days after the wire. USPTO recordation confirmation by post, crisp and official. I held it up to the kitchen light like you inspect a 20 to see if it's real. Real/frame. Names. Dates. No company listed between me and the buyer. Clean. I slid it into a sleeve, then into the lockbox, then into the new safe we bought because sometimes paranoia grows up and becomes...
94 missed calls used to be the scariest number on my phone. Now the number I love is 1. One name on a patent. One house with a 0 balance. One kid who looks at me like I didn't disappear. One quiet morning where the only siren I hear is the kettle, and it's calling me the coffee I can make myself. If you're listening to this and wondering if I drove back to that plant, walked into conference room B, and slapped the paid-off mortgage letter on the cake table, I didn't. I don't need their room. I don't need their applause. All the proof I need is pinned to my fridge and folded in my drawer. And walking down my stairs asking if I want to go get pancakes on a Tuesday, like people who aren't running from something. And when I think about Mark, the way he said, like a father, every time he wanted me to be a wall, I don't taste bitterness anymore. I taste steel and sugar and cheap frosting and the clean air you get when you stop living under someone else's budget line. I think about boys like Cody and men like Miguel and girls in shop class making bells flash for grandmas who can't hear, and I know where my time belongs now. One last thing. The neighbor who watched from across the street that day, Mrs. Patel, left a Tupperware of samosas on our steps with a note, "For your courage and your boy's flashlight." I took one bite and closed my eyes, and I swear I could taste the whole story. Spicy, hot, a little messy, the kind of good that makes you want to fix something for someone else because someone fed you when you needed it. That's the wealth that stayed after the wire cleared. Not numbers, not names on doors. The right to measure my days by what I build and who I build it with. The right to say no and have it mean something.
the right to keep my own receipts and my own stories, and the right to take a $25 card, slip it in a drawer, and smile, because it's not the point anymore.